Welcome to the Truth and Liberty broadcast. We believe we have a mandate to bring godly change to our nation and the world through the 7 spheres or mountains of influence. To further this cause, we give away a product every week that will empower you to get involved in changing your life and changing our world. You can register for our weekly giveaway by subscribing at truthandliberty.net. You can also subscribe to our newsletter to receive weekly updates on guests, news, and much more. This is an interactive live cast, and we welcome your questions. To ask a question during the live cast, use the comment or chat features. Now get ready to dive into this week's topics with our hosts on location in Colorado, USA.
Welcome to our Monday night Truth and Liberty live cast. We are glad that you're with us, and I tell you, tonight we have one of my favorite guys on with us, former Congressman Bob McEwen. I'll give him a better introduction in just a little bit, but I tell you, he's been with us many times. He's been on our Truth and Liberty broadcast before, and this guy just, he not only has an insight, he's been involved. He was, I think, 6 terms a U.S. Representative, and he's still involved in all of this. He speaks, and his perspective on socialism and capitalism is tremendous. So hopefully we'll get into some of those things tonight. And he's right there in the Washington, D.C. area, and he will bring us a perspective on things that are going on right now, and I think it'll be really good. But we want you to be a part of this, and this is a different format to where you can actually send in questions. And so this is Richard Harris. He's our chief counsel. Man, he's been doing double duty on top of everything else he does. We've been in lawsuits with the state of Colorado, and we've had a couple of decisions against us. One of them, they didn't even deem us to be a church or a religious organization. We were just like a TED conference.
That's right, conference center.
That just makes no sense whatsoever. So anyway, he's been doing all of this double duty, and I'm going to let him tell you how you can get involved and participate tonight.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everybody, for watching tonight. I'm really excited about this. It's going to be great. It's always great when Congressman McEwen is with us, and we're just really glad you're watching tonight. If you are watching by Facebook, I want to encourage you to hop off of there and get on our website. Go to truthandliberty.net, where you can have a more reliable experience, shall we say. Facebook has censored us a couple times, even recently, so go to our website. And speaking of our website, we have a lot of amazing resources there. I was just perusing through our resources page before the live cast got started here, and I'm impressed, Andrew, at how much stuff we have. It's really awesome.
And you're the one who does all of that.
I just forgot how much we have.
You surprised yourself.
Yeah.
You?
Well, for example, we have a link on there now for reporting voter fraud. And we also have links to some of the videos that have come out about the irregularities, should we say, in the recent election, and how you can get informed about all of those things.
That's a lawyer speaking. I call it fraud.
Fraud, yeah. But we've also got a 24/7 news link on there. You can get on there and scan the headlines from good, solid, conservative news sources, not the lamestream media, and lots of other resources too. So be sure to check that out. And we also have some events coming up here at the ministry. We're not going to do our normal Christmas show, but for everybody who lives in this area, we are going to have a live nativity scene. There'll be more information coming up about that on the website and so forth, but you'll be able to drive by and see an actual live nativity scene inside the campus here. So we're going to present it with no risk for COVID or anything else like this, and it'll be inspirational, along with the beautiful campus and the lights here.
And I heard today that we're going to have camels and donkeys and all that kind of stuff. I mean, live ones.
Inside the building?
No, not inside the building. They'll be outside.
Okay.
But it'll be awesome.
I was going to say,
And also, we're going to live stream the Heart of Christmas that we normally produce live, and it'll be in theaters for the local people. But we're going to do something live stream worldwide. I don't think all the details are worked out, but it'll be really good.
Oh, that's great. That's so good to hear. I wanted to mention the Men's Advance, which is scheduled for March 11th through the 13th, 2021. That sounds like a long ways off, but it's not. You will not want to miss this event. I tell you, it's going to be Andrew ministering along with James Brown and Tony Dungy, Greg Moore, Mike Pickett, Billy Epperhart, and it's going to be awesome. awesome. So check that out on our on the AWMI website, awmi.net/events. And then also God With Us, the Easter program in April. You can check that out on the website as well. Every week on Truth and Liberty, we give away a free product to new subscribers. If you haven't subscribed yet to Truth and Liberty, you can do that on our website by going up to the upper right-hand corner there and click subscribe. And then you'll receive our weekly email newsletter that comes out that helps keep you informed and provides additional resources to you about important events going on. And this week's giveaway is Andrew's book called Excellence: How to Pursue an Excellent Spirit. I think this comes from the scripture in Daniel, where it says that Daniel, the prophet Daniel, had within him an excellent spirit. You know, Daniel was in a heathen country, in a heathen government, and he rose to preeminence in that government because of the spirit that God had put within him.
You know, I don't know that I've connected that, but there's so many people disappointed with the way our nation is going, and yet compared to the nation that Daniel was in, man, we are just awesome. And yet he still rose to the top because of an excellent spirit. We can do it too.
That's right. God can still use you even in a Biden presidency, God forbid. But yes, even in a Biden presidency. Also, wanted to mention, as Andrew did, that it's an interactive process tonight. So be sure to post your comments and questions in the comment or in the chat function on our website, in the comment section on Facebook if you're still watching there. We're supported by the generosity of our members, and I want to invite you tonight to become a Truth and Liberty Coalition member if you're not already. It's real easy to do. All you need to do is go to our website, to the donate page, and sign up to make a recurring automatic contribution of at least $5 or more per month, and you'll become a Truth and Liberty Coalition member, and we'll send you a free gift in the mail. The gift right now is a copy of the New England Primer, which was the most commonly used textbook in America's schools in the founding era. And that's a great little book because it shows you how solidly Christian our culture and society was at that time as we use the Bible to teach our kids even how to read and write. And then last, wanted to mention, if you are in need of prayer tonight, we have trained prayer ministers available and standing by. These folks are Spirit-filled, Word of God-filled, and they are ready to agree with you in prayer. Just call in at 719-635-1111.
And, you know, I also want to say that in November, we took our 500,000th phone call for this year.
Wow.
So in 10 and a half months, we passed the 500,000 mark. And, man, it's just awesome to see
awesome,
the
Andrew.
number of people that are responding.
Praise God.
All right, so tonight we have former Congressman Bob McEwen with us. Bob, thank you for joining us again. I guess you're joining from your home there in the Washington, D.C. area?
I am, and it's great to be with you both, always.
Well, you're a blessing, and you've been with us a number of times, and I know you get tired of me saying this probably, but your teaching on politics, easy as pie, is, I think, the most profound contrast between capitalism and socialism that I've ever heard, and I don't know if we'll be talking about that tonight, but how would people get your materials? Do you have a website or something that they could get things from you?
Well, I do have that, and it's my name, Bob McEwen, E-W-E-N, BobMcEwen.com. And you can order, and the main thing is that I have a video that it's less than an hour, but it's politics easy as pie because you only vote on two things. You vote on integrity, the spiritual value system of the person, the leader, the party, the government that's running it, and the economic system, that is, how much money is a person allowed to keep and produce for themselves, or does the government control it? And just a very simple formula that the higher the integrity, the greater the spiritual value system, the higher the integrity, and the lower the cost of government, the greater the wealth. The lower the integrity, the more walls you have to put around the building, the more bars you have to put on the windows, the more guards you have to hire, the thicker the contract has to be because you can't trust the person you're dealing with. The lower the integrity and the higher the burden of governments, which is socialism, then the greater the poverty. And that's all you do is you turn those two dials and you make a country or a city or a county or a state rich or poor. You can make any rich place poor, or you can make any poor place rich just by understanding that. And you see these folks, California, gross domestic product, that's all the goods and services produced by that state, greater than the nation of France. And France has all of their wines and their armies and their embassies around the world and on and on. California doesn't have any armies or embassies or or navies. It ought to be rolling in money. And it, for years, had the best education system, was always #1 in the nation under Reagan and Duke Majan and all. But now they've had about 3 governors in a row that have turned it into a spiral. You have, it's now the 37th best education system in the country and dropping rapidly. You have people defecating and sleeping on the sidewalks and the streets. People are abandoning it. It costs as much to move as it does to rent a U-Haul in California because they're just not available. They have to take them there because people are leaving. So if you understand that, how socialism can make any rich place poor, or poor place rich.
That just seems so obvious. How is it that people are voting in people that are literally destroying that place? And I remember in your teaching on Politics Easy as Pie that you talked about Detroit, that at one time it was one of the richest cities in America, and it just went to pot.
Richest spot in the entire world by far, about 18%, nearly a fifth richer than the second richest spot on the globe. And they elected a racist, quite frankly, in 1957. And he was going to make his decisions based upon the skin color. And he began to increase taxes on working people, so they began to leave. Population of Detroit is now lower than it was in 1900. And it the corruption began to take place, such that it is now the poorest city north of the Rio Grande in all of North America. So if you understand it, you can make any rich place poor, or you can make this wilderness into this little 4% of the population of the world. You can make it into create more wealth than the rest of the world combined. So if freedom creates wealth, socialism creates poverty. It only works that way every time.
So I could understand people being fooled by some of the rhetoric and stuff, but once they experience that, like Detroit, how come they keep voting in people like that? What's the logic?
It is so frustrating. I mean, just look at New York. New York was just literally a hellhole. If you, under Dinkins, when you went to Times Square, it was nothing but peep shows and drugs and just, it was a wreck, a mess. And Giuliani came in there and began to enforce the law and got rid of the squeegee people that used to come along and key your car, and you got rid of the crime, and it began to collapse, and the city erupted and became the safest major city in the world. And everything was going great. Now you put Dinkins back in, or you put de Blasio, and he does exactly the same things they did before. That is, he overlooks crime, so that if you urinate on the sidewalk, he doesn't object. And so now they go out and literally do it in the square. If you jump over the turnstile and don't pay to go on the subway, the policemen were told that they couldn't arrest people that did that. And so in just a matter of just months, literally months, 3 to 4 years, and New York is now spiraling back in. I repeat, you can make any rich, beautiful, happy place poor if you just follow the principles of socialism.
But let me ask you, why do people vote for that? Once they've seen under Giuliani the way that it turned it around and became the safest major city in the world, why would they go back the other direction? Do you have an answer for that?
Oh, it's for those of us in our business, it makes you pull your hair out, because if you take education, if you take the 100 worst educational school districts in America, there isn't a Republican any place on any of those school boards. They take over Chicago or New York or whatever, and they destroy education. They destroy a neighborhood. They destroy jobs. They make a city and a state poor. And yet you see people actually vote to do that. But we fortunately had a president that said enough and began to turn that around. Money began to flow back into America, away from China. The stock market in China is now half what it was when Donald Trump became president. The stock market in America. Now, what is that? That's like a temperature. You say, well, I don't have stock. Well, that's not the issue. Is when you say what is the temperature outside? You say, well, it's 70. Then you know the environment. And when you see that people are investing from all over the world in America to the point that our stock market has grown 50% from George Washington to Donald Trump, and then jumped another 50% in just the last 38 months. So you can if you do the right things, lots of good things can happen. And if you do the wrong thing, well, you can end up like Chicago and Los Angeles, San Francisco, and New York.
So, Bob, let me ask you this. I consider you to be somewhat of an authority or an expert on socialism and what the potential dangers are. And now we actually have Democrats that aren't even hiding their socialist things. They are proclaiming it. And we've got the squad, and of course, Bernie Sanders, and I think I've heard Kamala Harris could be probably the most left-wing of them all. And they're actually advocating this. Young people, according to a Barna survey, over 50% embrace socialism and socialistic practices. Could you just explain and make it clear to people what the dangers of socialism are?
Well, everybody likes to live a good life. And there's only two ways that I can get things. One is to have people voluntarily give them to me. And they only do that if I do something for them. And so if I figure out that they need wheat and I grow wheat, or they want their house painted and I paint their house, or they want their lawn mowed, or they want a pair of shoes or an automobile, under free enterprise, you figure out ways to do good things for people. And the more people you bless, the more return you receive, and you become prosperous. And that's what the free enterprise system is all about. It's the way that anybody can go into business and see something that needs. I had a very good friend. His daughter's name was Wendy. He had worked with Colonel Sanders. He wanted to have his own, and so he went out and started Wendy's hamburgers. And so in America, you can do that. And that's what freedom is all about, so that this nation has more Nobel Prize winners than the rest of the world combined, more books, plays, symphonies, more inventions. You think of all the major inventions. We're on a television. We're using a light bulb, the air conditioner, the elevator that made it possible to have skyscrapers, and the airplane, and all the. Why did all of those things come from this little spot called America? Well, it's because under freedom that you can interchange and exchange ideas and say what you believe, and you don't have to cater to some power that says you can't say those things. Socialism is government control of the tools of production. Government controls what you can say, what you can't say. Government controls what you can work, where you can work, and where you can't work. And so when that happens, the inspirational creation that God made us all to be is stifled because you can't produce it. So let's just take our friends to the south in Mexico. In Mexico, you and I cannot go into the oil business. Why? Because under socialism, government control of the tools of production, government decides who can be in the oil business. And that's why also in socialist countries, they really hate the rich people, because rich people are people who have an arrangement with the government that they are the only ones that can be in the trucking business. They're the only ones that can be in the pipeline business. They're the only ones that can be in the grocery business. They're the only ones that can, and the list goes on. So therefore, if you're poor in a socialist country, you have no hope of ever being rich, because government controls the tools. And wherever they do that, whether it be in New York or in Los Angeles or someplace where government begins to take over things and tell you can't open because I said so, and I don't care what you think. And you have to have, you can only have 25 people in your restaurant because I said so. That is socialism. That is government control. Now, in America, the principle is supposed to be that if somebody from Mexico or somebody from Southeast Asia floats into the harbor at Long Beach at 8 in the morning, they can own 5 7-Elevens by midnight, because in America, the free enterprise system allows individuals to own property. And therefore, they can become all that they wanted to be. That's why you see Mexicans crawling over cut glass and barbed wire and swimming in leaky boats trying to get to America, because in America, you can become what God made you into. Under socialism, you have to do what the powers tell you. And anybody who's gone to college lately knows that how the colleges tell you what you can say and what you can't say. And that's what the whole principle of socialism is. It wants to control whether or not you can drill for oil. And when Donald Trump became president, he said, I don't think we should have to pay people who dislike us in the Middle East. Why should we send them money? We have more oil and gas than they do. Why don't we get it here? And so America became energy independent. And we've just chosen a new president that if he takes office in January, he said on very first day that he's going to put a stop to that. And so under socialism, government tells you what you cannot do because it does it all for itself. Under free enterprise, the consumer, the customer determines what is produced in what quality and in what quantity. So that if you have if you give a person a bad treatment, then you go out of business. And so you figure out ways to do good things for people, and that's what makes the free enterprise system work, and that's what made America the richest, most powerful nation on earth. Not because we're smarter, not because we work harder, but because we're freer. And that's what the elections are all about.
Let me ask you this question. Biden has already promised that he was going to raise taxes significantly. Trump, this economic boom that we had, from my perspective, one of the reasons that we boomed and had the lowest unemployment, I mean, for minorities, for everybody, and the stock market has gone through the roof and everything, is because he lowered taxes. How does this play into capitalism versus socialism?
It's important for people to just stop to think. There's the cost of making a product. Let's say I'm going to make a shirt. I'm going to have to buy some cotton. I'm going to have to buy a machine that can sew it, and I'm going to hire people that can then do the work to make it into a shirt. And then there is the cost of overhead. What is the cost of the building, the heating and cleaning, and the taxes? And so every time I increase the cost of something, that means the price of that shirt is going to become more and more expensive. So if I can take it to a foreign country where the labor is very low and there are no taxes, then I can make it there and bring it back here, and you're out of business. That's what a lot of the people on the left want to do. They want you to go on welfare, and then you're dependent on the government, and then they're happy. Under free enterprise, we don't want to do that. We want people to go into business for themselves. And so therefore, every time you increase the taxes on a product in America, you make it uncompetitive so that people can't buy it. And just take Burger King, for example. It was in Milwaukee, but our corporate taxes were 35%, and in Canada they were 15%. And so just by moving across the border, they could save 20% in order to stay in business. That's what was driving businesses away and making, if you walk down Main Street in small town America, you see all the empty stores, because for 30 years, we elected people to office who said we're going to increase the taxes on business to make their product so that people wouldn't pay for it. So when you walked in, you saw two shirts laying there on the counter. One is $19 and the other is $26, and you took the $19 one because it was made in Taiwan, and the $26 was made in North Carolina. So what Donald Trump and people who believe in free enterprise want to do is to lower the taxes to make our products more competitive. And once he did that, there was an explosion to the point that the unemployment among blacks, unemployment among women, unemployment among minorities, unemployment in America, the lowest it had ever been. And so that, of course, frightened the left, and they had to come up with all the excuses as to why he needed to be removed from office, because free enterprise works every time. If you believe in it, then you can create it. If you don't, then the final part, just stop and think. For every young person says, well, what is socialism all about? Just ask yourself this question. Remember, under free enterprise, the way I get wealthy is I do something for a person. That's because I had to make something that they got in exchange. And so the two of you stand there and look at each other, and you say, I'm not real sure whether or not, I'll just tell you what happened this afternoon. I had a fellow working on my riding lawnmower, and he said, you need a new gasket. And I said, how much is it? $400. Okay, I'm standing there looking, and I'm making a decision. Is this worth it to me to do this? And under free enterprise, you have to provide a service that is significant enough that you make the exchange. Under socialism, you just come in and just take it. And you say, you're going to live in this house, you're going to do this job, you're going to, and here's the price that you're going to get, so that you don't have that freedom. And here's the example. You say, I'm going to tax those oil companies. We need more money. You can just hear Kamala Harris saying this, or any of them saying, those oil companies, they need to pay their fair share of taxes. And if you're completely ignorant, you'll sit there and clap and cheer and think that makes sense. Now, let's go to the next step. Does an oil company have any money? Of course not. The only money they get is at the pump when they sell their oil. And so if you increase the taxes on a gallon of gasoline by $1, who pays that? You and I pay that. And so the idea of increasing taxes on business does two things. It makes that product less competitive, so whether or not it can even survive in the business, or if it is able to survive, you and I get to pay the tax. So any politician that comes along and tells you that I'm going to give you something, remember, he first has to take it from someone else, and he has to take it from you. And so if I'm going to take it from the oil companies, That means he's going to take it from you every time you pump gas. I'm going to take it from the farmer. That means every time you buy a gallon of gasoline. I'm going to take it from those big corporations that make the sheets and the shirts. That means every time you buy something, you're going to pay it. So increasing taxes makes a country poorer. And you can get a chart from 0 to 100, and you put every country on that chart, and the principle applies. The lower the taxes, the greater the freedom, the greater the wealth. The higher the taxes, the greater the government, the greater the poverty. And that's what cities do. That's what states do. I'll just tell you, when I was in the state legislature in Ohio, Ohio was #1 in new job creation, more than any other country on earth, any other state in the union. And we increased taxes over and over and over. Got a new governor, and he said we need to do that, such that when the last governor took office, Ohio was 49th out of the 50 states. So you went from #1 to 49. If you understand that principle, you can do it in any city or any state or any nation. And the nation just made a choice here a couple of weeks ago that we're going to have to correct very rapidly, I think.
So, Bob, let me ask you another question. I can understand why the poor people and people on welfare would fall for this kind of thing, that we're going to tax the corporations, give you more stuff. That's just the love of money, greed. But why do the tech giants and these big corporations, why do they support higher taxes? What's the logic behind that for them?
Excellent question. Excellent question. And I asked that same one because when Richard Nixon became president, he sent a person out to all the major corporations, and they said, what is the one thing that you want? And they said they wanted to increase taxes on capital gains. That's on the price of the stock. He thought, now, why would you do that? Well, the reason you do that is it makes it harder and harder for companies to compete with you. So if you're on top and you make it harder to enter the business, then that's why you make an alliance that's called socialism, government control. And so you see all of those billionaires in Wall Street and in Silicon Valley making great deals with the Democrat Party, and the person who was the chief lobbyist for all of the tech companies out in San Francisco was just appointed the chief of staff of the White House. So they want to control. Why do they want higher taxes and control? Because they can handle it, but it makes it impossible for competitors to enter the market against them, and they will always do that. And so if you're a liberal, you get the best of all worlds. You get the support from the people that are parts of the organization that need help. And then you get the wealthy from the top. The people that vote Republican are the people in the middle. They're people that get up in the morning, go to work, and get a paycheck at the end of the day. If you get government help, if you live off the government, or if you look at your portfolio and just click to see how rich you are today, those two people at both ends of the spectrum tend to be liberals because they are not individually producing. But those that get up in the morning, who make breakfast, go to work, and come home and get a paycheck at the end of the week, those people are overwhelmingly conservative. That's the middle class. And that is the class that is being murdered. That is the class that's being stomped into the ground by this whole idea of closing down our economy. And that's why the stock market is up among the large companies where they're making money hand over fist. But the small businesses on Main Street are being killed by this, quote, pandemic that they claim that they have, in which has shut down and simply said, in arbitrary socialist fashion, you have the mayor who said he waited till 2 days before Thanksgiving, and all these restaurants were able to borrow some money and cobble things together to have a large Thanksgiving event. They had several reservations, and then 2 days before Thanksgiving, he said, the mayor of Los Angeles said, oh, by the way, we're shutting down all restaurants for the next 3 weeks. And they interviewed these people and said that was the end of it. That the last money they had, they put together to buy this food that now they're going to have to throw away because they're going to be closed on Thanksgiving Day. That is socialism. Socialism creates poverty.
You know, I just heard a report, and I forget where this was. I think it was New York, but they said that I think they were going to lose 1/3 of all of their small businesses.
Oh, wow.
Because of this. I just can't, I mean, to me, that would devastate the economy there, not only the individuals, but these leaders are making these decisions. And let me just make a couple of comments, and then I'd like to get your response. But I just read that this Hillsdale College guy spoke, Stanford guy. He's one of the ones that sponsored the Great Barrington declaration. And he said that there will be 130 million people die in 2021 through starvation because of the food chains being interrupted by all of this.
That's worldwide, right?
Worldwide. And then he was talking about the education of young people that are going to be affected for decades to come. Some of them, I heard a report that, I forgot what it was, but it was well over 50% of the people that are online are making Fs. They just aren't able to function in that environment. And on it goes. The suicide rate, we now have, I think it's 40% more suicides in the county where I live than in 2020 than we had in all of 2019. It's and so this is, to me, it is so narrow-minded to be looking at this sickness only and ignore the social impact and all the things that you're talking about. I'd like your comments on that.
Unless your desire is power, and their effort is to get power, and so this is how they do it, regardless of how much chaos and damage they do in the process. Last Sunday, the Johns Hopkins Hospital did a report in which this researcher had the audacity to look at the number of people that are dying in America. And it has the number of deaths for the last 10 years. And each year it goes up slightly. The population gets larger every year. And so it grows very slowly until this year. And this year it looks as though we're going to be in the neighborhood of 200,000 to 250,000 fewer deaths. That is in the neighborhood of 1.2 to 1.4. It's going to be 200,000 fewer deaths than last year. Now, if that's the case, and you're in the middle of a pandemic, and you've got this red chart on the television flashing there every day, and you begin every morning on Fox News, there were new records were set today. More people today came down with the virus. Okay, what they don't point is that's like saying more people got cancer, more people had a toothache, or more people had other things. How many people died? And it's virtually nothing. And if you look at, you talk about flattening the curve has been massively flattened. There's less than a handful of under age 18 in the entire state of California, 40 million people, and yet they've shut down every school. So what is the issue? The issue is there's only so many caskets, there's so many death certificates. So if there's only that many people dying, then what are you doing? And she took the chart. And I would encourage you to do this. By the way, by Wednesday, they had to take it down, but you can still hunt for it and you can find it. It's the Johns Hopkins report on the number of deaths in America. And you will see that they had to collapse the number of deaths by heart failure and by cancer and by tuberculosis or by what. All of those have to be reduced massively, lower than they've been in a quarter of a century, because you want to move those over here to all of these people that have this COVID. So anybody that dies for any reason, they say it's COVID in order to do what? It's spiritual, in order to create a spirit of fear. And you were talking about all of these things that happen in marriages and in depression. What is that? That is spiritual. So if you're Satan and you're involved in a spiritual attack, what is the most important ingredient into that? To shut down the answer. And the answer is the church. The answer is the scriptures. The answer is the place is forsake not the assembling of yourselves together, so much the more as you see the day appearing. So there's the answer. So why don't we use the socialism, power of the state, to shut down the spiritual answer and leave these people here to dry? And that's why this is such a massively spiritual battle, that you saw people just erupt with hatred and visceral to the president, because the president of the United States was restoring the spiritual rebirth of our nation that we've been experiencing these last couple of years.
And Bob, I can confirm all those things you were saying, because I checked in Teller County, and in 2019, this is a small county, 25,000 people in the whole county, and in the county we had 161 deaths in 2019. In 2020, we've had 119. So we're 56 deaths less during the pandemic. And yet we had 19 suicides in 2019, and they've already, 14 in 2019 and 19 in 2020 already. And so we've had 4 people die with COVID in the county, but we've had 5 extra suicides. We've had 56 less deaths, and yet they're still using that as an excuse to keep churches from meeting and stuff. It's just, it's a power grab is what it is.
And to control people. That's what socialism is government control. And to tell you that you need to, you notice they don't use the term masks anymore. They're using face coverings. That's what the Taliban did. That's what Erdogan did when he brought back the old Islamic standards in Turkey. They had to do the face coverings. And so now everyone has to have a face covering, and teaches young children how to have face coverings. Well, what, the expression, when the Lord comes into your heart, there's an openness, there's a lightheartedness, there's a happiness that radiates from people. And this is the ultimate spiritual battle that we're experiencing right now. Wow. And how in the world, and we just touch on the fear again, the whole idea, just as you remember, it's not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Those are the three opposites of fear. That when you have fear, you're afraid. And the Lord wants us to have power, love. You cannot love a person that you're afraid of, or a sound mind. When you're afraid, you don't think straight. And so he has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love and of power and of a sound mind. And that's the competition that we see going on. You and I enjoy the power and the love and the sound mind, and we find it so difficult for people to succumb to the fear. For he has not, for perfect love casteth out all fear, for fear hath torments. And that's what we're experiencing.
So, Bob, I really believe that this is a spiritual issue, and whether the people that are in power realize it or not, they are being motivated by the devil. He is attacking the church, just like you're saying. But they come out with this thing that, well, we're saving lives. We're compassionate. If you really care about other people, wear your face covering and things like this. Do you believe that the people that are enforcing these things, the governors and the local officials, are they aware that this is a power grab, or are they deceived, thinking that somehow or another they're helping people, doing good?
That's an excellent question, Andrew, that conservatives get all their lives. After every speech, people come up to you and say, now the people, just like you said, when those people become the mayor of New York, and they do that to New York, do they do that because they hate people, they want to be unemployed and poor and living in poverty, or do they do it because they're stupid? And for the first 20 years of my political experience, I tried to juggle the two. Finally, I just threw my hands up and said, it really doesn't make any difference because the impact is the same. And so for your question right there is, some of them do, I believe. I think there are many people in positions of leadership in Sacramento and in Los Angeles who know exactly what they're doing. And when they open up the gay bar, and they open up the strip joints, and they open up the hashish markets, and yet they tell a church that you cannot meet, I don't think that that's by flipping a coin or arbitrary or throwing a dart at the wall. They know what they're doing. Now, do all of them do it? No, a lot of them just want the power grab, that they're a little mayor somewhere and they want to tell you what you can do. But it's damaging and destructive and anti-American, nevertheless.
A friend of mine, Rob McCoy, he's been on our Truth and Liberty here a number of times. He pastors out in California, and they allow the strip joints to stay open. So what he did on Sunday morning, he played a strip song and took off his tie and his coat in front of the thing, and he called their service a strip club, and that way they could meet without any restrictions. That's pretty sharp.
It's so true. That's literally the case. That way they would be exempted. If they're worshiping God, they could be fined and go to jail. And that's why you saw Donald Trump saying that this isn't a rally, this is a protest. We're protesting that people are going up and down the streets, burning and pulling down statues and all. So the reason the president can have a rally is because he's having a protest, because protests are just embraced left and right by the left in the cities. But brother, if you want to go to church, any 10 of you, we've got to put a stop to that.
Well, that's the reason that we've been in this lawsuit, because we have a 3,200 seat auditorium. You've been in our auditorium here, and they restricted us to 175 people in a facility that altogether, using all of our rooms, we could accommodate over 4,000 people, close to 5,000 people. And they had these draconian restrictions on us. We checked everybody's temperature. We asked them if they had symptoms. We asked them to wear a face mask. We didn't go around as the Gestapo and enforce it, but we told people what the restrictions were. We were more restrictive than I can guarantee you Walmart or any of the other stores, and they had 10 times as many people come through. And yet if a person gets COVID in Teller County, Colorado, it gets attributed to us, even though the weekend that they gave us the blame for an outbreak, they had 50,000 campers in this county of 25,000 people, and yet we were the source of everything. It's just pitiful.
It's crazy.
And that's where it's hard to see that people cannot see that this is more than just political. This is Satan's effort to undo the work of God. And this nation is the lighthouse for the gospel. 85 cents out of every dollar that goes for the global evangelism comes from the United States. The United States is a standard for righteousness on the high seas and in the air and everywhere. This is why they chant death to America. Why? Because you take down America, you can take every place else. And we, as God's children, have inherited this blessing, the greatest blessing of all mankind. And our responsibility is not, we don't have to sleep in the snow or march with bloody feet into battle or lay and climb the walls in Normandy. All we have to do is faithfully vote for men and women who understand what makes this country work, and it's a spiritual.
So I've kind of driven the conversation with all my questions. We got just about 2.5 minutes before we start taking questions from the viewers. Is there anything you want to say, Bob, that was on your heart?
No, sir. No, sir. I'm delighted.
You're doing good. All right. Well,
we'll point out, because the whole idea of the questions about that in the key states that were on the bubble, we knew how New York was going to go. We knew how Texas was going to go. We knew how, but there were states that really mattered were Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania and Georgia. And why would those states suddenly quit counting in the middle of the night? Now, nobody else did. But then suddenly you have this eruption of hundreds of thousands of votes for one candidate, and lo and behold, by morning, he's ahead. So that is the only thing that I would add to the conversation.
And the last 2 weeks we've had on people that this was the focus of everything that we talked about, and they showed so many irregularities. Do you know Janet Porter by any chance?
I do. Ohio.
Yeah, she was on last week. She was here with us, and she actually put up the screen that showed that Trump had 1.6 something million votes, and then in just a few minutes it went down to 1.4 million. He lost 200,000 votes, and Biden went up 200,000 votes, just boom, all of a sudden. And she was giving us some proof on that.
Yeah, lots of proof.
No, most anybody's ever gotten in a crescendo like Ronald Reagan or somebody, when people say, that's who I want. The most jump has ever been was 5 million votes. Donald Trump got 11.5 million more votes now than he did 4 years ago. There's no way on earth that anybody could beat that, unless you suddenly have these artificial numbers where you find out that this man, Mr. Biden, who didn't speak and who didn't campaign and who didn't take an issue, suddenly outpolled Barack Obama in some of the inner city districts. The absurdity of it is hard to grasp. More 90-year-olds voted in Wisconsin than have registered as 90-year-olds over the last decade. And suddenly they all registered and voted in the last 90 days of the campaign in a period of a pandemic. So, I mean, you're right. There's more proof here. So we have to make sure that we don't lose Georgia. We need to stand firm, and I believe the country is going to come back and restore itself by 2022.
Yeah, for those that are viewing, if you go to our website, Truth and Liberty, we actually have an interview, or the press conference that Giuliani and Sidney Porter did, and she pointed out that in some counties there was 350% of the registered voters who voted.
Right.
How you cannot see that as fraud is hard to believe.
One more thing that sometimes isn't always caught, Andrew, and that is this, and that is the mail-in balloting. And we need to understand that, and let me just remind people, no place on earth, no country in the world mails out ballots, live ballots, let them lay around, you go around, scoop them in, and bring them in to vote. If Zimbabwe did that, there is a country in the United Nations that would recognize its legitimacy. They don't do that. That is different from absentee. Absentee says, my name is John Jones, I live in Cincinnati, Ohio, but I'm going to be, in November, I'm going to be in Atlanta at this street, at this address, and you match the signature and you send it to that person. That's voting absentee. That's no problem. Mm-hmm. Voting on a mail-in is the idea that you take ballots and you just mail them to everybody. So there's an empty lot that there used to be a a series of townhouses there. And over the 20 years, you find out they're mailing hundreds of them to this empty lot. All a person has to do is scoop them up and then turn them in, and you create these anomalies that we saw here. That has never, ever been done. It has been done for the last 8 or 10 years in California. That's how California is in the free fall that it is. And when Pelosi became Speaker just last year, H.R. 1, the first bill that she passed, was to do that nationwide. Well, we see why they want to do that. They want to do that so that they can then come in and give ballots. Remember, ballots do, my wife always emphasized, I failed to mention this. When you mail in a ballot, you have your name and address on the envelope. When you take the ballot out of the envelope, there is no more chain there. So when you show a whole bunch of ballots, like in Georgia, they announced yesterday that they recounted. In Arizona, they recounted. Well, that doesn't tell you anything. If you put artificial ballots in there, you're going to get the same number you did before. Yep. The question is whether or not you have proper registration and identification, and that's where a person shows up or they vote absentee. The idea of mail-in, where you just mail them to anybody and any address that there is, and allow that to be an election, that's never happened, doesn't happen in any other country. It's never happened in America before. It's happened in Pennsylvania and Milwaukee and in Michigan this time, and that's how they got the election, and that's what needs to be stopped.
So I know we need to take some questions, but I've got to ask this question. If this is true, and if the Democrats do win the White House and stay in power, how is this system ever going to be changed? Right. Is this the last objective election that we've ever had?
Very possibly. That will be one of the first bills that they'll pass. They will make this mail-in voting nationwide, and that's they pledged to do that. Then they pledged to do away with the Electoral College, and the Electoral College was put there as a gift of God, divine intervention, to make sure that one state couldn't take off with it. And they want to make it such that they would really do away with it. That would amend the Constitution. You don't have to do it. You make the way that it's counted, and you say that it would automatically go to the person that they stacked the most ballots with. So if they do that, then they can also change the Supreme Court. That's been a protection for us when people want to do crazy things. As you know, and we've used the example in America, we are not a democracy. We need to make it abundantly clear. In a pure democracy, rights come from the majority. But in America, our rights do not come from the majority. Our rights come from God. And I use the example. If you vote in America 95-5 to kill Jews, you can't do it. Why? Because the Constitution of the United States says that we protect life. And our rights come from God, who gave us life, gave us liberty at the same time, as Thomas Jefferson said, and that's our protection. Now, the interpretation of that is the Supreme Court. So if somebody tried to do something haywire, we could go to the Supreme Court and say, see, that violates the Constitution. That's what the Supreme Court is for. That's why they're very concerned about who sits on the Supreme Court. And that's why if we lose the seat in Georgia, that Schumer and Pelosi have said that they're going to change the law to put more of their people on the Supreme Court. And I say, well, what does that mean? That means that in the Constitution, it says you shall have a Supreme Court. And then it names only one justice, and that is the Chief Justice of the United States. And such members and subsequent courts as the Congress shall determine. And so the Congress decides how many people are on the Supreme Court, which is currently 9, has been that for 140 years. If they can change it anytime they want to. They can make it 19. They can add another 10 next year. Biden can put those in if we lose control of the Senate and by losing that seat in Georgia. And those are the things that could change America for all time. Our nation has never been at risk this greatly as it is at this time.
I agree with you 100%.
You know, Bob, I'm going to throw in there 2 other agenda items. One is open borders, and the second one is making Washington, D.C. a state, or at least giving them senators, where they would then lock in control with supermajorities that I don't know how we could ever break. So that seat in Georgia is just critical, isn't it?
You can't overstate it. And what is it about the open borders? Well, they can then determine to give citizenship to people who know nothing about America. As you know, if you want to become a citizen in Israel, you have to go through Aliyah. You have to learn the language, the history, etc. People came to America for 200 years to become American. Now we have people come here because they realize they can live the life of a king, and they'll vote to make the working people pay them. And so therefore, one of the first things that they promised to do is to take the 22 million, maybe 30 million, however many there are, and give them citizenship, so that the people that are Americans that came here for the purpose to build a country and love our flag and don't spit on it and don't bow their head in the sand when it goes by, and that those of us that really love our country, that we would be outvoted by their capacity to add another 22 to 32 million people, and that would change the country significantly.
Well, I could listen to you a long time, but we need to take a few questions here at least.
Yeah. Well, we've got a lot coming in. A lot of them are asking about what happens if Trump does pull out a win here. If he goes to the Supreme Court and they somehow negate this, are we going to have a civil war on our hands? Some people are asking those questions. What are your thoughts about that?
I think that the left does not love America. That's all there is to it. And Washington, D.C. was completely boarded up after the election for just that reason. We know what the left does. People who love America, people who teach Sunday school and coach Little League and mow their lawn and pay their taxes, they don't go around burning down their neighbors' houses. People that hate America, people that burn our flag and shout down our president. When I came out of the White House, as you know, they wanted to make it such that the president couldn't give a speech anyplace. And so it was supposed to have a Republican convention in North Carolina, and the governor said, no, you can't have more than 100 people. He tried to go elsewhere. Every state turned him down. So he said, all right, I'm going to do it in the backyard of the White House. And he did. When we came out of there, the gauntlet that we had to run from these anti-American Biden supporters with their viciousness, their foul language, just the attack, the abuse that you encountered, those people that have destroyed Seattle, destroyed Portland, destroyed Chicago, those people, if Trump is able to take office, as we all pray that he could, those people they don't like our country, and they will do everything they can to take it down.
That's a shame.
Well, here's another question for you, Congressman. How can we make a difference in the Georgia Senate election?
Well, the most important thing you can do is to get everyone to vote. And this is where the question as to evangelicals, people who know the Lord, they sometimes can be told from the pulpit, this world's not our home, we're just passing through. Let's let this lighthouse for the gospel, this place that people hope and pray survives, let's just turn it over to Satan's people. Let the 2% teach their perversion to our children and take over our school boards. We're not going to get involved. That idea for 40 years has really been counterproductive. And now as we begin to wake up, what can we do? We can register and we can vote. And I will give you a message board that you can use from now on, in which you can tell people how to register to vote. I'm going to be spending a week, along with 4 other folks, going from a group of pastors, morning, noon, and night, because the pulpits have somehow discouraged Bible-believing Americans from their responsibility to be faithful servants and to be faithful stewards. And if you all remember the parable of the talents, Christ gave that parable, and it wasn't very nice to the fellow that buried his talent, his vote, his capacity to impact his country. And I knew you were a good man, and I didn't want to get involved. Well, fine, get out of my sight, go to where gnashing of teeth. I don't want to ever see you again, and give what he has, give it to the person who did produce. That's what our vote is. Our capacity it rests upon us to make sure that we are registered to vote, and I'm going to give it to you as to how to do that. It's sometimes complicated for people. I'm going to give you a message where you just type it in on your cell phone. It'll come back with the form, and then you type in the name of the person. And if you have any friends at all, most people don't know this. This is all public record as whether or not a person's registered to vote. You type in any friends that you have that live in Georgia, make sure they're registered to vote, and then make sure that they do show up, because Stacey Abrams, who has prided herself on being able to change the state and deliver it to Biden, she claims that she already has 890,000 votes secure for this effort. So this is for all the marbles. If they pick up these 2 Senate seats, that means they will be able to do in the House, the Senate, and the presidency anything that they wish. If we are able to hold on to one of those Senate seats, then that means that they will, at least if they want to do something like stack the court and do away with our current Chief Justice system, that they wouldn't be able to do it. So you cannot overstate the significance of this election coming up in the 1st of January.
Amen.
Amen. Well, here's another question about socialism, and this one is, how do we explain socialism when political correctness has stalled common sense? In other words, I think they're asking, how are we going to teach this generation what socialism really is?
Well, and Richard, That's really a good question, and it gets back to truth. And you've heard me speak about truth. There has to be a standard somewhere, and if you take the standard down, then you're wandering all around. You don't even know if you're a boy. You don't know if you're a girl. You don't know if it's it or if you call a person we or she. How do you do that? It's in the first chapter of Romans. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, as they began to worship the creation and not the creator. And so everything in our system was designed to protect that, so that every official document says, I don't care, declaring Groundhog Day or whatever you're doing, every official document, Thanksgiving Day, look at the proclamation the president made. What is the last sentence? The last sentence is done, and there are two starting points from which everything else goes. And those two starting points are, number one, done in this, the year of our Lord, the 2020th. That is the starting point of when Christ came to this earth, and of the independence of the United States, the 243rd. So those are the two starting points of when Christ came to this earth and when America was founded. When that was the standard, and you had it on the wall, thou shalt not kill, shalt not steal. You began every day with prayer. Then you had a starting point in which you could make reference to things. But the question here about political correctness, where you can't even talk properly, why? Because the standard is not godly standard. It's a group standard of the people. Well, anybody who's had to rely upon man knows that that's when he's dangerous, and that no one is safe. And that's why our founders wanted to put our faith in God, who was the source of our liberty. So I understand the question. It's the same spiritual fight that we always encounter.
Okay, this will have to be our last question. 2.5 minutes left.
All right. Well, Ruthie on chat, Bob wants to know, how do we prevent an economic crisis that has happened in other countries from happening in America's future? Also, how do we help countries and cities that currently have those situations?
Well, the question is that when you operate responsibly, then people trust you. And what would you do at a bank that was overextended? Well, the first thing, you quit making bad loans and you encourage people to deposit. And so in America, if we're tottering here, what we do is we put people back to work. We lower the taxes on production of goods and services so that people create jobs, and then they pay taxes and the system rights itself. It's not hard to do. It just has to be smart. But if you don't do that, then you end up with Hitler, and where it took a wheelbarrow of money to buy a loaf of bread. You do it with what happens in Mexico and Latin America with high inflation, all the things that America has avoided until now.
Well, Bob, I tell you, I sure appreciate you and appreciate everything you shared with us, and I appreciate what you're doing. You every time I'm around you, I really get inspired, and God's using you.
Let me speak for all the people that are watching you, Andrew, and that is, we appreciate your humble spirit of dedication to our Heavenly Father, and you faithfully bring us together and inspire us, and for that we're grateful.
Well, amen. We're looking forward to having you back with us here sometime. You're always a blessing. And for those of you that are watching tonight, thank you for joining us. Remember, you can go to bobmcewen.com and you can get his materials. He's got that teaching on politics, easy as pie. I tell you, I've listened to that many times and recommended it many times. It would be a blessing. Again, let me thank CTN for carrying this on some of their stations as a blessing to us. What a blessing that they've been. And we do this every Monday night, come rain or shine. And we've had on some of the greatest interviews, things that you don't hear in the mainstream, or the, what do you call it, the lamestream media. And so it'll be a blessing, and we do this every Monday night. And I really encourage you to join us, because it's always encouraging, and it will help equip you. So thank you for joining us. Again, thanks to Bob McEwen for being with us, and God bless you. We'll see you again next Monday night for our Truth and Liberty live cast.
Join us next time for the Truth and Liberty broadcast. Find tonight's episode and related articles and links at truthandliberty.net. Truth and Liberty is viewer supported. If you'd like to help us continue our live casts, you can make a donation at truthandliberty.net.